Hey, live stream audience, welcome back. I'm so excited here to have Thierry Damiba with me here. You're a developer advocate for Qdrant.
Yes.
I would love to just start by getting to know a little bit about you. You're both a data scientist and an advocate.
Yeah. So I started out as a data scientist for the Department of Homeland Security, and I was mostly working on models, pipelines, data engineering kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed it, but the part of the job I enjoyed the most was actually teaching people and talking with people and presenting my work.
Yeah.
So after I finished with that gig, I was looking to get into developer advocacy, and I built something called Semantic Cache, which we can talk about later. Qdrant reached out to me, and now I'm a developer advocate at Qdrant. And the cool thing about being a developer advocate is when I solve a problem for myself or for Qdrant, I can also share that knowledge with thousands of developers. So it feels like you're almost kind of doing some mass healing, or you're casting a spell. So it kind of feels like magic.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Definitely just talking about some of the magic of AI and some of the projects that we're working on is more fun than really getting into the day-to-day pipeline.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can you get us oriented a little bit to what Qdrant is?
Yes. So Qdrant is a vector database.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with vector databases, it's a way for you to store things like embeddings as well as metadata that's related to whatever kind of documents you have. So if you can imagine, you have pictures, video, PDFs, audio. To run those classical machine learning techniques, you need to turn that into numbers. So when it's turned into numbers, traditional databases don't handle that very well, which is where Qdrant comes in. You can kind of think of it like a memory layer or a search engine for your data. So you could just upload, for example, 1,000 pictures, 500 of them cats, 500 of them dogs. Without labeling, you would be able to search for cat or dog and find the relevant pictures.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to include 5 photos of Cat Dog, the Cartoon Network, in there and see how it handles
Classic.
that. So how does Qdrant fit into the larger network of vector database companies, and what makes you different?
So the big differentiators for Qdrant is definitely we are open source.
Yes.
We are focused on speed, and we are developer friendly.
Yeah.
So going through those three, Qdrant is fully open source. So if you have any concerns with data privacy, data sovereignty, and also you can just go on GitHub and start using Qdrant today. So the code is completely open, as well as all our demos.
Fantastic.
And then in terms of performance, we're really focused on being the fastest vector database. We like to think of ourselves as a steak knife simply for vector search.
Yes.
So the only thing that we care about is how we can improve the experience of vector search. And given that, it allows us to really prioritize so that we have the fastest product as well. And then finally, developer experience. That's part of why I'm here today. We want to make sure that the product is easy to use, easy to get started with. And if you have any questions or concerns, you always get an answer. You can look at our Discord today and you'll see that even our C-level executives are in there answering questions. So we just have a culture of really helping developers get started, and when they're stuck, getting them unstuck.
How would people find your Discord?
So if you go to qdrant.tech, you can find us on Discord. And if you just go to any Google Qdrant Discord, you'll be able to find it.
Fabulous. So could you walk us through maybe a really good example that you've seen of a project that leveraged Qdrant, and really specifically those features around speed, low latency? What makes a good project? So
there's a lot of examples. If you're on the internet, you probably have used Qdrant without even knowing, because we are under the hood for a lot of products. So if you're on social media, there's a good chance you're using a website that uses Qdrant for recommendations, for example. So if you click a post, or if you click on a profile and it says, hey, can I see similar profiles or similar posts? That's the kind of things that Qdrant powers. As well as if you're on a video streaming platform and there's going to be recommended videos. That's what Qdrant powers. As well as if you're on an e-commerce site. And you get those recommendations. But in addition to that, Qdrant also can do the search part. So you can imagine if you go to a clothing website and you type in something like funky 70s outfit, it might not understand your query.
Right, you need a semantic layer.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then in terms of a specific demo, we're working a lot with legal companies as well as e-commerce. So for legal, you can imagine it's very dense language, very jargony. They've got tons of documents. It's multimodal. And they need to be able to get that information quickly. So we're helping a lot of legal companies do that. And then for e-commerce, it's just how do you convert more, right? So for example, if you type in a search for red shoes, what do you expect to see? Some people are going to say, well, you should show me some red Nikes, like a sneaker. Other people will say, well, you should show me some red high heels.
Right.
Other people will say, you should show me some burgundy loafers.
Yeah.
And the question is, what should we show the user when they type in red shoes? And
Yeah.
the answer is, of course, it depends.
It depends.
Yes, so Qdrant can help you out, make sure that you get the relevant results to your users.
So if I were an e-commerce website producer and I wanted to solve this exact problem, right, getting a little bit of understanding around that semantic search and recommending to a customer, how would I go about that?
So, like, basically what you want to do is you want to start thinking about how you can relate your user's behavior to the content behavior. So we actually have a case study online with, I believe it's Dailymotion, where we talk through this process of combining metadata filtering with collaborative filtering. So collaborative filtering is, for example, if I know Catherine likes watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Cat Dog, and then she goes to watch Shrek, well, if I know someone else has watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Cat Dog, I should recommend them Shrek.
Yes.
But then we've also got the content filtering, right? So for example, Cat Dog and Shrek are both cartoons. So if you watch Cat Dog, maybe I should recommend you Shrek.
Yeah.
So by combining those two, first, you're not going to have, when you're first starting, you got the cold start problem. So you won't necessarily have that user data. So you're just going to have to recommend off of content.
Yeah.
But as you build more and more data, you'll basically be able to recommend based on the user as opposed to the content.
Yeah.
And then you can combine them to really get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that specifically those stuff like recommendations during e-commerce has a huge lift in terms of basket size and propensity of customers to convert.
I mean, how often have you clicked that, let me add that thing that they recommend, right? It's like...
You got me.
I got a few packages on the way.
I can be convinced. One thing about me, I can be convinced. So curious about the open source nature of Qdrant and how that really makes you different from other vector vector database companies and how it shapes how you engage with developers. We talked about your Discord, but
So Qdrant was started before the whole LLM wave actually started, which gives us a huge advantage because we were building it before it was cool. And as part of that mission, we built it open source because the creators of Qdrant, the two Andres, they actually...
the two Andres.
Yeah, we've got two Andres. It's actually a very cool company.
That's awesome.
One from Russia, one from Ukraine. They met in Georgia and founded the company.
No way.
And we're currently based in Berlin, so we love the international community.
That's huge.
But they decided to make it open source because the idea was we want to build something that improves the industry, right? It's not just for us. It's something that's actually going to raise the standard because they were working on these search products that use AI and they just didn't find any databases that were able to keep up. Because of the changing dynamics with the embeddings and the vectors, there wasn't a product that existed that did that. So when they went out and built this, they were basically building it for themselves. So it made a lot of sense to just share it with the world. And we've kind of continued with that mantra where we're open source and we love our community. Our community is our backbone. And I think, especially in 2025, people really gravitate to open source because they can feel like they're a part of the community. And oh, by the way, if you make a good PR on Qdrant GitHub, it'll get accepted. Right? If you go look, you'll see that some of our users have improved our product. So having that as well as, of course, the data privacy and data sovereignty. So if you're working with any kind of sensitive data, whether that's medical, legal, financial, government, you're going to need that. So we're SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliant, all that good stuff. And the open source really helps with there. And then finally, since it's open source, anyone can go out and try it on their own, right? Obviously, we have our enterprise offerings that give you more features, more authorization, more security, etc. But if you just want to get started and see, hey, how does my data look in Qdrant? You can go on GitHub today and get started.
So we've been talking a lot about RAG here and a lot of RAG-based projects around. From your perspective, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for developers building with RAG?
So I actually have a bit of a unique answer to this. I think that the RAG era has been a little oversaturated and that developers should start thinking outside of RAG. And we're actually currently running a hackathon that is a think outside the RAG hackathon. It's like a no RAG hackathon because we want to see what kind of stuff can people build that isn't just a chatbot. So to give you an example, RAG over video. So imagine you have video of a basketball game and you want to find out every time number 11 passed to number 13. You could have a human watch it. Or you could just do RAG over the video, right? Because we can split that video into chunks and then we can describe each chunk and then we can say, hey, we found 5 instances of 11 passing to 13.
Yeah.
Now you can imagine something like if we have that in a parking lot, and we know that at 4 a.m. the parking lot should be empty. Now all of a sudden at 4 a.m. there's 7 cars in the parking lot. We can create a system where we alert security to say, hey, there's something weird going on here.
Just a heads up.
Exactly. So I think
That's fascinating.
like future is actually RAG outside of chatbots, right?
Yeah.
Being able to implement it in things like, for example, that fun 70s outfit.
Yeah.
And then create an outfit for you, or
Yeah.
cooking recipes, or other enterprise use cases that aren't just a chatbot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Video over RAG.
Yeah. We're working with 12 labs on that.
Yeah.
They're a really cool video embedding platform. And as I mentioned, you can literally do video over RAG, and you can also search by different modalities with Qdrant because we have named vectors. So if you upload a video, you can search by text. You could upload an image and search, or you could search by audio.
Oh.
Or you can search all of it combined, right? So if you have a video and you know that you want to make sure that there's no, let's say, logos or no, you want to make sure Will Smith isn't in it.
Yeah.
Maybe you have beef with Will Smith.
I do.
You could upload a picture of my good friend Will
Yeah.
and then tag every moment in the video that he may or may not appear.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, that's got my mind turning on a lot of potential applications.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. No,
that's really interesting.
That's kind of the fun thing with vector search is like there's going to be a lot of different industries that come out of it because it's so new and so fun.
Yeah.
And it feels a little magical
Yeah.
because the information retrieval world has been plugging along for a very long time, right? And these concepts have been pretty solidified, but I think the idea of embeddings have really changed the game, right?
Yeah.
And as they get more and more advanced and more powerful, it's going to be even cooler.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So you've spoken recently about choosing the right embedding model
Yes.
for applications. What's one thing that builders often overlook when they're making their choice there?
Your priorities.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, for example, just want the most accurate embedding model.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you care about speed? Do you care about cost? Also, how are you defining the most accurate, right?
Right.
Usually you just want your users to like your product. So you kind of want to think backwards and ask yourself, okay, do I, for example, if you're running a AI to detect cancer based on images of biopsies,
Yeah.
you really care about accuracy,
Yes.
right? You don't
Yeah.
care if it takes a week for the results to come back. You want the results to be accurate.
Yeah.
On the flip side, let's say you're recommending videos to people on a short form video platform. You need those right away, right? The user's not going to sit there for 5 minutes for you to recommend the perfect video.
Yeah.
So thinking about what your use cases and what your priorities are is probably the most important part.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, I would really recommend like actually try stuff in a practical way because often in the benchmarks, what you'll see is this kind of sterilized, there's dependency soup. When you try to run it yourself, it doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
So you might go to those benchmarks and say, hey, I want to use that. But when you actually try using it in practice, you don't get the same results and then you're going to be frustrated. So
Yeah.
I'd recommend just starting off with a simple model, right?
Yeah.
And Qdrant actually just introduced inference. So you can do it via the Cloud UI.
Oh, can you dive more into that?
Yeah. So we just released our Qdrant Inference,
Uh-huh.
which basically means that in the past you would have to send your embeddings to a different service or maybe build a back end and a front end that talk to each other. Now you can have it all in the same application so that when the user submits a query,
It's huge. Uh-huh.
we can embed that query for you automatically and then get you the relevant results.
Wow. Okay.
So we made it a lot easier for people to basically build AI applications.
And is the primary benefit there for the builders of the AI, or are you seeing improvements in latency as well? Like, does having all that happen in one place?
Having it all in one place definitely is going to improve the performance.
Yeah.
But the biggest benefit is just for developers. We're making it easier for them to get started with their apps. And then also, even in production, now you've got less microservices you need to worry about, right? So we all know the more parts that are involved, the easier things are to break, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for explaining that, for talking me through that. And really thinking about, we at AI Fund talk a lot about getting user feedback, building quickly, getting user feedback. So what I'm hearing there on the embedding model as well, what I would encourage people to do is to, put a basic model in, a simple model, and then go out and put it in front of your users and have them show you and tell you where their values are.
Exactly. And I'm also a big believer in pairwise ranking. So what you can do is basically compare two embedding models and then just see which result you prefer more, right?
Yes.
So do kind of a blind test where You give 2 embedding models and then say, hey, I prefer this answer.
Yeah.
And then compare it against another. Oh, I prefer that answer. And that's a really easy way, because when you give people like a 1 through 5 score or even a thumbs up, thumbs down, it's kind of hard to know sometimes. Like, what if both results are thumbs down, right? What if they're both thumbs up, et cetera? So it's easier when you just say this one's better than that one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for folks watching the live stream who might want to dive into vector databases but feel intimidated, what's a good first project that you'd recommend just to get the feel of using a vector database? What's an easy project to start with?
Easy project to start with is just grab some text and see if you can search through it.
Yeah.
So just go online, find an open source text like Sherlock Holmes or something that's, out of copyright, and then just see if you can build, exactly, don't get sued, and then see if you can build something that allows you to search it, right?
Yeah.
And that, I would say, is a good way to get started, or even a PDF. Upload a document to Qdrant and then see if you can search through that document.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good first project.
And then I'd also mention that we have our MCP server. So if you're just getting started, or even if you're more experienced, I would definitely recommend checking out the Qdrant MCP server.
Yeah.
Because that's going to make it easier to get started.
Oh, that's awesome. Here in the room today, we're talking about speed to product, building as fast as we can.
Yep.
Have you seen Qdrant be really helpful in that kind of speed to market situation?
Yeah, because one of the cool features of Qdrant is we have our cloud deployment, we've got our local deployment, and we've got the Docker deployment. But you don't need to change any of your code to swap between those 3 deployment mechanisms. The only thing you need to do is change one line of code where you say, hey, the client is local, or the client is cloud, or the client is Docker.
Yeah.
So when you're prototyping in local mode, maybe with a sample data set, you get your system up and running, all you have to do is change that one line of code and you can go to prod.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It would personally reduce my penchant for making mistakes.
Yes, exactly. We try to make it as easy as possible.
Scaling is scary.
Yep, and then we also do support auto scaling.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you are worried about, or you're not exactly sure how to size your cluster, we can just handle that for you.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a meta question, but what's one trend in AI that you think people are underestimating right now?
I would say definitely mobile AI.
Ooh, say more.
I think a lot of people are currently frustrated with the offerings that phones offer in AI, and I think just have a little patience, people out there. There's some really cool stuff coming. We just released Qdrant Edge, which allows you to run Qdrant on mobile devices.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be really big, because now all of a sudden you're going to start to see a lot of these applications actually taking advantage of AI on your phone.
Yeah.
Whereas pretty consistently now people have frustrations about how the AI works on phones. And I think that's going to really improve now that we have things like Qdrant Edge.
Yeah. That's something that we've been watching very closely as well, both from like enterprise scale applications where you might be working in low connectivity environments and need that edge deployment on all devices, but then in phones. I mean, just a large language model, we're starting to get those, smaller parameter models.
I think it's kind of cyclical, right? Because there was that really big mobile first wave that came maybe 10, 15 years ago, where everyone wanted to be on, I have to get an app, I have to be on mobile, etc. Most people still spend more time on their phone than their computer, but they're not really using AI on their phones outside of perhaps apps. They're not using the AI to make their lives on their phones easier, right? So I think that's going to be the next step, is increase your quality of life basically by using AI on your phone.
Yeah. And we've seen a lot of the major, I'm on the Apple ecosystem, we've seen some slowdown in terms of the deployment of some AI features on device. Where is your optimism there, or what's your timeline?
I don't have a timeline, but I think what you're going to start to see is just little features that make your life easier. So for example, let's say you have a reservation for dinner. Your phone knows that you have that reservation. Maybe based on your preferences, it might recommend what to order. Or it might send you a text when you need to leave. Things like that. I think that's the integrations that we're going to start with. And then from there, the sky is, of course, the limit.
What are Qdrant has been around since before the LLM era. We obviously have seen a massive pace of change difference. Are you guys experiencing that as well? And kind of what do you think? What are your projections for the next 2 years, let's say?
Definitely, LLMs are changing the game, right? I think if you're not using AI or IDEs and those kind of things in your life, then you're going to fall behind. On that same token, though, it is very important to actually understand what's happening when you ask Claude Code or Cursor or whatever your preferred IDE, GitHub Copilot to do something for you.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't actually understand what's going on, then when it's time to debug, you're going to kind of fall down and be like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But we definitely have adapted AI. I use it a lot in my work. And as I mentioned, we do have that MCP server. So if you're looking to use Qdrant, you can basically use that to search relevant documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned your own work. How is AI impacting your work?
I would say it's been a huge unlock.
Yeah.
I'm actually here today inspired by the Build-a-thon. I'm building anomaly detection on New York City taxi data. So I built an app basically looking at yellow taxi data for 2024 in New York City. And then I vectorized all the rides, and then I analyzed which ones were anomalies. So I built that app. It's fine. I then threw it to Claude Code and I said, hey, based on this app, what are some suggestions that you have? And Claude gave me 4 or 5 different suggestions. For example, one of the suggestions Claude gave me was, I had all the rides already mapped out. Claude said, what if there was a play button that would allow the user to actually follow each ride on the map? So things like that, where it's just improving the demo, it's not necessarily code. It's just oh, that's a good idea, and I didn't think of it, right? Let's make it a movie instead of just a picture. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So things like that, I think, are the big game changers. And then also just being able to plan better. So you can ask, for example, hey, I have this New York taxi data set. How do I embed it? How would I do best retrieval on it? How do I do anomaly detection on it? These kind of questions, I think, is where AI comes in really powerful. And then, of course, just trying to stay up to date with everything that's happening right now. There's an app that's powered by Qdrant called asknews.app. And that's an app that allows you to actually query the news. So Ask News has deals with New York Times, Washington Post, etc. And you can also forecast the news. So this is the kind of stuff that Qdrant's powering, right? You can go on their app or on their Discord and say, hey, what's the S&P going to be in 6 months? And it'll give you a prediction, it'll give you a confidence interval, and it'll give you the sources and the reasoning behind the prediction. So those kind of applications in conjunction with domain expertise, you can imagine, asking the right questions, getting the right answers, and now you have the information and you can actually build something that people want.
And where can people find that tool?
If you just go to asknews.app, you can find that. Yeah. So that's a Qdrant product we're really proud of.
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about exactly this type of news aggregation, personalized news world. And it seems really exciting, right? And potentially ability to impact kind of the bubble, some of the news bubbles that we find ourselves in.
And it's also a really good way to introduce people to AI because I know, for example, there's people in my life who were very scared or reticent to use things like GPT or Anthropic Console or whatever your preferred AI platform is. But when you're like, hey, you can ask this about the news that's going on back home, and I'm from Africa, so things like that. Now it clicks for them. They're like, wait a second, I can ask what are the chances of there being an attack in the next 6 months and plan my travel around that. Now they get it, right? So I think just showing people the different ways that they can take advantage of the technology to improve their life has been really powerful.
So it sounds like you're not only a developer advocate, but then also a liaison to the to the non-technical AI-afraid community.
I think that's happened. I don't know if that's been on purpose, but yes. I think that happens to everyone who works in AI. In your friend group, you kind of become the AI guru, right? So I get a lot of questions about, hey, what model should I use? Or, how do I do X, Y, Z, all those kind of things. And
the should I be afraid of this? Should I? I get a lot of those texts.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is awesome. Have you seen any really cool magic moments of somebody, seeing AI work for the first time and really changing their mind?
So I built a demo that basically allowed you to search house pictures based on the features. So if you go to Zillow, you have some features that you can do, but what if you want a house with a huge island, but white tubs and deck on the roof? Zillow doesn't really have the capabilities for you to do that at the moment, but with semantic search, you could just type in what you're looking for, and we're going to return relevant results. So I have a friend who works in real estate, and when I showed him that demo, I think that's when it clicked for him because he's basically spending all day going through the manual filters trying to find these different things. So the idea that it could be automated into just semantic query was kind of an aha moment for him.
Yeah, we've been getting really excited about this component, just essentially in user decisions kind of across the planet.
Exactly.
E-commerce, house searching, highly considered purchases, moderately considered purchases. I'm shorting the filter menu, like a filter-based search, because I think that people really have a lot more nuance to capture in their search, right? So instead of just going to a filter menu and saying, you know, I want a deck on the roof, but not being able to really find that quality of Big Island, you're able to, you know, really focus on that. And then we've been building a lot of systems that then come forward and ask you the questions that surface information from you that you might not think to specify, or you might be, what we find is like assumed in your head. Like a car search, if I were to ask you to describe your perfect car, you probably wouldn't specify that it has 2 doors or 4 doors, because in your mind you just have a picture of a car in your head. So
and one of the cool things about Qdrant is with hybrid search and metadata filters, you can get the best of both worlds. So you can have those filters in there for things like price, color, garment type, but then you can combine that with the semantic side. So if the user wants to say, hey, I only want items below 50, then they can do that as a filter. But if they just want to type in a query and say, give me a linen shirt, that works as well. So we kind of give people the option of both, or combining them for the best of both worlds.
Also then capturing nuance, I think, in context. I was riding alongside a user who was making a search, and as he was talking through his filter search choices, he was for cars, he was saying like, oh, I really want an electric, but gas is fine. But that filter representation search is equal weights.
There's no way
electric
to say,
and gas.
You know, gas is fine. It's just, yes, I want gas.
Exactly. But it's a 50-50. I care equally about gas.
So that nuance, I think, is kind of like the sweet spot, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we're getting ready to wrap up here. What can we expect to see from Qdrant in the next, coming up? What can you drop? What can you tease?
We're always going to be dedicated to vector search, always dedicated to speed, but specifically Qdrant Edge we just released. So keep an eye out for that. We've got the Qdrant Inference that allows you to just use inference via Qdrant, which we're really excited about. So now you don't need to worry about your embeddings. And third, I would say Vector Space Day, which is going to be our event in Berlin. That's going to be at the end of September. If you are able to get out to Berlin, we'd love to see you there. If you're not able to, as I mentioned, we're doing our hackathon right now, so get involved in the hackathon. But those are the things I would say we're really excited about.
And what can people expect to find on Space Day in Berlin?
So Vector Space Day is going to be an event that we're hosting, and it's all about vector search. So we've got some really cool partners like AWS, Microsoft, Mistral, Neo4j, a lot of people who are here today, actually. So, it'll be fun to reunite in Europe. And we just got a full day of programming all about vector search. And then, of course, we're going to have, some fun after and before.
Fantastic. Well, fun after and before in Berlin. Sign me up.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Thierry, it was so great to meet you. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. Enjoyed it.